At noon, every prisoner in the mess hall lifted his spoon except the SS officer at the front table, who pushed his untouched bowl toward an American guard and refused to speak. While General Patton entered without warning and noticed that 3 men behind him were watching the door instead of the food, because the officer's hunger strike was not a protest against the meal, and the reason he would not eat was hidden inside the kitchen wall. In May 1945, Major Karl Brenner and 200 German prisoners were held inside a converted barracks complex near Regensburg, where American guards processed surrender papers and prepared units for transfer. Brenner had commanded an SS security detachment, so Captain Lewis kept him apart from ordinary soldiers and watched every movement he made. At breakfast, Brenner accepted bread and coffee, but at noon he pushed away a bowl of stew without tasting it. The guard at his table ordered him to eat, yet Brenner only turned the bowl so its chipped rim faced the kitchen door, a small movement that made 3 prisoners along the rear wall stop talking. Captain Lewis assumed the refusal was political theater and ordered the meal removed. Brenner then stood, pointed toward the kitchen, and asked that the cook be searched before the next serving left the room. Lewis refused to let a captured officer direct his guards and sent Brenner back to his table under escort. General George S. Patton entered the mess hall during an inspection and noticed that Brenner's untouched bowl had been placed beside a stack of empty ones. Instead of asking why the prisoner was refusing food, Patton lifted the bowl, smelled it, and compared its surface with the stew being served from the main pot. The food looked identical, but the grease on Brenner's bowl carried a faint blue powder around the rim. Patton ordered the kitchen closed, the serving line stopped, and every bowl collected before anyone left the room. Several prisoners protested because they had already eaten, while the cooks backed away from the stove. An American medic tested the powder and found it was not poison but a strong sedative taken from the camp infirmary. The amount on one bowl could have made Brenner unconscious within minutes, which raised an immediate question about who wanted the SS officer asleep before the afternoon prisoner count. Lewis searched the kitchen staff and found nothing, but Brenner pointed to a section of wall where one brick carried fresh mortar. Guards removed it and discovered a narrow metal tube containing a folded camp map, a copied gate schedule, and a list of 5 prisoners marked for movement that night. Brenner's name appeared first, followed by 4 men who had served under him. The map showed a path from the infirmary window to a drainage channel beyond the fence, while the gate schedule included American patrol changes that only someone inside the administration hut could have copied. One of the marked prisoners, Sergeant Vogel, suddenly overturned a bench and ran toward the kitchen exit. An American guard blocked him, but Vogel threw a metal tray through the window and climbed after it, reaching the service yard before soldiers closed the outer gate. Patton ordered Brenner held in the mess hall while Lewis pursued Vogel. Minutes later, guards found the sergeant beneath a supply truck with a second tube tied inside his sleeve, proving that the refusal to eat had exposed an escape plan, but not who had chosen Brenner as the man who needed to be silenced. Subscribe for more forgotten German POW stories like this one. Patton moved the 5 marked prisoners into separate rooms and ordered the kitchen workers questioned one at a time. Brenner explained that he had seen the blue powder used in German field hospitals, but he refused to identify the 3 prisoners who had watched the door until Patton guaranteed they would not be punished for speaking. Patton gave no promise of immunity, yet he ordered Lewis to record every statement before deciding charges. The first witness, a former clerk named Ebert, admitted that Vogel had offered bread and cigarettes to anyone willing to carry messages from the laundry to the kitchen. The second witness produced a spoon with a hollow handle containing a strip of microfilm. Signal officers enlarged the images and found photographs of American vehicle passes, guard rosters, and a handwritten note directing a truck to collect Brenner from the infirmary after sunset. The third witness refused to speak until Brenner entered the room. When Brenner appeared, the man accused him of ordering executions during the retreat and said Vogel planned to remove him before an Allied tribunal could question him, because Brenner knew which officers had abandoned prisoners and stolen civilian gold. Patton ordered Brenner's baggage opened. Inside a false lining, guards found a pocket ledger listing dates, villages, and coded initials, but several pages had been cut out. Brenner admitted keeping operational records, while denying that the missing pages concerned gold or executions. A truck engine started in the motor yard before the interrogation ended. Lewis looked through the window and saw an ambulance moving toward the gate without authorization, while a man wearing an orderly's coat sat beside the driver with his face turned away. Patton sent 2 jeeps after the ambulance and ordered the main gate closed. The driver crashed through a wooden barrier, crossed a field, and abandoned the vehicle beside an old brewery, where investigators found a medical stretcher, civilian clothes, and 1 page cut from Brenner's ledger. The missing page named Lieutenant Roche, another SS prisoner held in a separate compound. It also contained a warehouse number and a notation showing that Roche had received sealed cases during the final week of the war, then transferred them to men whose names had been replaced by numbers. Vogel escaped his room during the confusion by loosening a heating pipe and entering the ceiling space. He reached the records hut, burned 2 transport files, and tried to steal Brenner's ledger before Lewis caught him beside the rear door. Under questioning, Vogel admitted that the sedative was meant to place Brenner in the ambulance, but he claimed the plan was not an escape. He said someone outside the camp had paid to take Brenner alive because the SS officer could identify a hidden shipment that had never reached Berlin. Patton ordered Roche transferred for questioning and placed armed guards around Brenner's room. The escalation had moved beyond a camp escape because an outside group possessed American passes, knew the patrol schedule, and was prepared to remove 1 prisoner before he revealed what had disappeared during Germany's collapse. Roche arrived under heavy escort and immediately denied knowing Brenner, yet his fingerprints matched a grease mark on the metal tube from the kitchen wall. Patton placed the 2 officers on opposite sides of a table and set the recovered ledger between them without asking a question. Roche broke first and accused Brenner of hiding 6 cases of looted gold beneath a railway depot near Passau. Brenner answered that the cases had contained church records and identity files, then challenged Roche to explain why armed civilians were now trying to recover them. Engineers searched the numbered warehouse from the ledger and found its floor recently repaired. Beneath the concrete lay an empty chamber, several torn canvas straps, and a railway tag showing that the cases had been moved 3 days before the American Army entered the area. A local station master identified the destination as a mountain siding near the Austrian border. Patton sent Lewis, Brenner, and an engineer team by truck because Brenner knew the storage markings and could separate genuine military crates from traps left during the retreat. At the siding, the team found an abandoned freight car sealed from inside. Lewis opened a roof vent and saw 6 wooden cases, but Brenner noticed that the suspension springs sat too high for cargo as heavy as gold, proving the visible load was almost certainly a decoy. The engineer removed one side panel and discovered wires running from the crates to the car's steel doors. Instead of opening them, the team uncoupled the freight car and pulled it onto an empty quarry track, where a controlled blast destroyed the false cases without damaging the station. Inside a drainage culvert nearby, Brenner found the real canvas straps and followed their drag marks to a farmhouse. The occupants had fled, but the cellar contained filing cabinets filled with identity cards taken from concentration camp prisoners, foreign laborers, and missing civilians. Lewis also found a radio log showing that messages had been sent to an American supply unit using a stolen frequency. One entry ordered Vogel to prepare Brenner for removal, while another stated that Roche would be killed if the warehouse search reached the farmhouse. Before the team could leave, a truck blocked the road, and 3 men in mixed civilian and military clothing opened fire above the farmhouse entrance. Lewis moved the evidence through the cellar passage, while Brenner led the engineer team to a rear orchard marked on an old property map. The attackers withdrew after military police arrived, but one captured man carried an American fuel pass signed by Captain Lewis's own deputy. The discovery forced Patton to suspend the deputy and place the entire camp administration under investigation. The identity files became the major consequence of Brenner's refusal to eat, because they connected the hidden shipment to thousands of missing people rather than stolen gold. Patton sealed the farmhouse records, while Brenner learned that his own name appeared on several transport orders authorizing prisoners to be moved without destination. The major reversal began when an Allied records officer compared Brenner's signature across the recovered files. The orders carrying his name had all been written by the same clerk, yet the letter shapes differed from the signatures in Brenner's genuine service book. Forensic staff concluded that Brenner had not authorized the transports listed in the farmhouse records. The forged orders had been created by Roche's office, using Brenner's rank and unit stamp to hide the movement of civilians and valuables during the retreat. Roche denied the finding until Patton produced the missing clerk, captured near the Austrian border with American ration cards and a packet of forged seals. The clerk admitted copying Brenner's signature after Roche threatened his family and ordered him to prepare false movement papers. The confession did not clear Brenner of other crimes, but it reversed the immediate case. He was no longer the officer protecting a secret shipment. He was the witness whose records could separate authentic orders from the forgeries used to conceal it. Patton removed Brenner from isolation and placed him under guarded witness status beside the records team. Brenner identified the numbering system in the ledgers and revealed that the missing cases had been divided among 3 railway depots rather than stored in one place. Military police raided the first depot and recovered foreign currency, jewelry, and sealed civilian archives. At the second, they found medical supplies diverted from displaced person camps. The third depot stood empty, but fresh tire tracks led toward a monastery used as a temporary hospital. Roche's remaining supporters entered the hospital wearing Red Cross armbands and attempted to remove 2 record clerks hidden among the patients. Brenner recognized one man at the entrance and alerted Lewis before the group reached the ward. The imposters abandoned their vehicle and fled through the monastery garden, leaving behind the final case of documents. Inside were payment lists naming German officers, local collaborators, and 2 American contractors who had exchanged fuel and passes for access to hidden property. Patton ordered the contractors arrested and canceled every prisoner transfer signed through the compromised office. Vogel then offered to testify against Roche in exchange for protection, providing the location of the sedative, the forged ambulance route, and the outside contact who had planned Brenner's removal. The outside contact was not a surviving SS commander, but a civilian broker working with both German fugitives and corrupt Allied employees. He had wanted Brenner alive only long enough to identify which records were genuine, after which the witness would have disappeared. Patton placed Brenner's ledger, the clerk's confession, and the recovered files into one sealed evidence chain. The officer who had seemed to refuse food out of arrogance had instead stopped a plan designed to use his knowledge and erase him, while Roche became the prisoner isolated from the men he had controlled. A military tribunal opened inside a requisitioned courthouse, where Brenner entered as both a captured SS officer and a protected witness. Patton attended from the rear while prosecutors placed the sedative bowl, forged passes, ambulance order, and recovered transport files before the judges. Roche's lawyer argued that Brenner had invented the conspiracy to reduce his own responsibility. Brenner answered by identifying 3 genuine orders in the files, then explaining small code marks that proved the others had been prepared by Roche's clerk. The captured clerk confirmed the method and demonstrated how unit stamps had been lifted from discarded forms. Signal officers then played the radio logs, while Vogel identified the broker who had supplied American passes and planned the ambulance removal. During a recess, the broker's associates cut power to the courthouse and opened a service door near the evidence room. 2 men entered wearing maintenance uniforms, but Lewis noticed that their tool case lacked the dust carried by every worker in the damaged building. Lewis locked the corridor while Brenner and the records officer moved the sealed files into the courtroom vault. The intruders tried to escape through a basement window, where military police captured one and recovered a bottle of accelerant from the other. Power returned, and the tribunal continued without losing a single document. The captured intruder identified a truck parked near the river, where officers found the remaining jewelry, blank identity cards, and a list of witnesses marked for removal after the trial. Roche attempted one final reversal by claiming the list had been written by Brenner. A handwriting expert compared the letters with notes seized from Roche's cell and matched the same unusual crossed numeral that appeared beside every targeted name. The judges convicted Roche, Vogel, the broker, and the American contractors on the evidence presented, while Brenner remained subject to a separate investigation for his own wartime conduct. Patton refused requests to reward him, stating that truthful testimony did not erase any crime outside the case. Before Brenner was transferred, the camp doctor returned the metal bowl that had carried the sedative. A small blue stain remained around the chipped rim, and Brenner asked that it be placed with the official exhibits rather than destroyed as kitchen waste. Patton signed the evidence order and directed that copies of the recovered identity files be sent to tracing offices across Europe. Families could now search names that had vanished behind forged transfers, making the records more valuable than the gold everyone had first expected to find. The irreversible event came when the complete archive left the camp under Allied seal, divided among 3 destinations so no single theft or fire could erase it. Brenner boarded his transfer truck under ordinary guard, while the untouched meal that had started the case remained documented as the moment a hidden network lost control of its records. Months later, Brenner sat before a separate tribunal and answered for orders proven to be his, without hiding behind the forgeries that had carried his name. In the evidence room, the chipped bowl rested beside the recovered ledger and the first metal tube from the kitchen wall. Patton never called the refusal heroic, yet he ordered one fact preserved in the record. A prisoner had recognized the trap, refused the meal, and forced the truth into the open before the men controlling it could remove both the witness and the names. Most people know how World War II ended. Very few know what happened inside these prison camps. Subscribe for more untold WWII stories.